Welcome to another episode of Mexican in the Kitchen. The base for this dish is going to be a very simple rice. The amount of rice I'm using is about 1 glass. I'm using basmati rice, but you can use any kind of rice you want. Also, the measurements you use is not really important, as long as you use the same to measure the water and the rice. I'm going to add some garlic powder and I'm going to add some salt. At this point you can also add whatever other kind of spice you want, any other flavoring. This is a really good time for that. I'm going to shake it around a bit just to make sure that they are mixed. I'm adding a tablespoon of butter on top. Now I'm going to use the same container I used for measuring the rice, and I'm using it for adding water. It's important to use 2 measurements of water for every one of rice you use. If you use less or more, then the consistency of the rice might be a bit off at the end. Now that we have all the ingredients and we added the water, it's really important that you don't mix again. So without stirring, I'm going to put the stove on a 4 or 5 out of 6, so it's high fire. And I'm going to wait for it to boil. After a few minutes you will notice our rice is starting to boil. This is when we want to stir our rice, so take a spoon and mix everything. Make sure you take everything from the bottom. Once we have stirred everything, we will close the lid and move it to another burner. So on my back burner I have a 2 out of 6, so it's very low fire. We will leave it there for 10 to 15 minutes. It depends on your stove and what kind of pots you're using, so on the first time you try you'll probably have to keep an eye on it a bit more. After 10 minutes the water of our rice should have evaporated completely. It should look something like this, but at this point you should keep the lid on. So we're going to turn the stove off, but we're going to leave it there with the lid on for another 5 minutes. After those 5 minutes we're going to take the lid off and we're going to move it away from the stove. We're going to give it some time to cool down, and we want to give it another 5 minutes before we serve or we move it to another container. If we start stirring before we give it all these times, we can end up with a mushy rice or the texture won't be as nice. I'm going to start cutting the broccoli now. I'm going to start cutting the top first, and I'll cut everything into small pieces. The size of the cuts is up to you, but if you do them small and even, it's going to cook way nicer and evenly. Now for the stem, some people might throw it away. What I will do is just cut the bottom part. That part I'm not going to use, but then I will cut everything else into smaller pieces. The stem will take a bit longer to cook than the top, so we want to make small cuts so everything will cook evenly. Once we have everything cut, we can continue with the chicken. Our rice has cooled down by now, and as you can tell it has a nice texture, and we're going to use this as the base of our dish. I have a pan now on a 4 or 5 out of 6, so it's quite high fire. Make sure your pan is really warm already. I'm using this chicken that comes in really small pieces already, but if you buy chicken breasts or chicken thighs you can cut it yourself. I had just a bit of canola oil on the pan. At this point I'm just going to season my chicken with some salt and pepper. We're going to use this really basic seasoning because we're going to add some more stuff later. At this point we just want to make sure our chicken gets cooked without overcooking it. After a while, our chicken is quite nicely cooked now. I'm going to take it to a different plate. I'm going to put it on the side and we're going to use it later. It's cooked already, but I don't want to overcook it because I'll throw it on the pan again. I have my pan again on a 4 out of 6, so medium high fire. I'm going to add some sesame seed oil. This is what will give a lot of its flavor to this dish. My pan is hot already, so I'm going to throw my broccoli into it. What I want to do at this point is to move the broccoli around. I want that oil to get into all of the broccoli. I want to move it, mix it, make sure every broccoli gets a bit of this oil because it's going to give a really nice flavor. You notice I'm using a different spatula, and that is because I used the last one with raw chicken and we want to avoid cross-contamination. So it's better if you just change and use a complete different one. After a while you will notice that the broccoli started to change its color. Maybe in the video you cannot appreciate it as well, but when you do it you will definitely notice. At this point I'm throwing my chicken back in because I wanted to soak a bit of that flavor from the oil. And I'm also adding some soy sauce to it. This will help season, and that's why I didn't add salt to the broccoli, because soy sauce is quite salty itself. At this point our dish is almost ready, and I'm going to keep it on the fire for about 5 more minutes. After these 5 minutes you will notice the chicken is getting this brown golden color. It's really nice. At this point I'm going to throw in some sesame seeds. I don't want them to burn, that's why I add them at the end, but this will give also a bit of a nice flavor. This will also add a bit to the presentation, since this is sesame seed oil, chicken and broccoli. After a quick mix, our dish is finally ready and we can serve. For serving, I'm going to start with a bed of rice. As I mentioned before, this is the base for our dish, and I think this will bring a more neutral flavor and will make the chicken and the broccoli to stand out. After serving the rice, you can top it with your broccoli and your chicken. You will notice the contrast of colors, that's really nice, it really makes the broccoli stand out. You will notice also the flavors work really nice together, work in a really nice balance, but you will get still a lot of the freshness, and that's the beauty of this dish. It's very simple, very few ingredients, and it still works really nicely. This one recipe I really like because it's quite simple. It's something that you can just with a couple of ingredients throw something really nice together, and it's a very healthy dish. It has a bit of everything, some protein, some fiber, some carbs. It has a lot of flavor, and probably the main thing for me is that the broccoli doesn't lose this crunchiness, but it's cooked, but you have a crunchy element. You have the rice, the chicken to go really nice with it. It's a very nice dish, really simple, very few ingredients. And if you like the video, press like, subscribe, activate the bell, all those kind of things. Let me know in the comments if you liked it. What else would you throw in? If you would add some other vegetables, would you change something? And see you in the next one.